All right guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to part 3 of the best designed .30 caliber rifle cartridge series. Stay tuned. All right, here is the current state of our bracket. Today's matchups: 300 PRC, 30 Nosler, 300 Rum, 30 378 Weatherby Magnum, 300 H&H, and 300 Weatherby Magnum, 300 Win Mag, and 308 Norma Mag. All right, so as you just saw, we have 4 matchups today. And I'm going to start with what I consider to be the easiest choice, and I'm going to move on, because some of these are really, really tough. So we're going to start with the 300 Weatherby versus the 300 Holland and Holland. All right, so there's something to be said about the 300 Holland and Holland. First of all, it's the parent case to the 300 Weatherby. It's also the parent case to the next matchup we're going to talk about, which is the 308 Norma versus the 300 Win Mag. So the 300 Win Mag, the 308 Norma, and the 300 Weatherby are all derived from the 300 H&H. That's the reason they all have a belt in the back. Now speaking of belts and design, the 300 H&H gets a point right off the bat because the belt on the 300 H&H has a reason for existing. It's to headspace. So if you look at the 300 H&H Magnum, it has extreme body taper and an 8-degree shoulder angle, which, by the way, makes it feed exceptionally well. So it's an exceptionally well or good feeding cartridge design. But because of that extremely non-steep shoulder, it has to headspace off something else. It's not rimmed, and so it headspaces off of that belt that was added. Now this was a feature added to the 375 H&H, which was the parent case of the 300 H&H. The 300 H&H was brought about in 1925, same year as the 270, but in a different continent, over in Europe. And it's a classic cartridge. It's really the first .30 caliber Magnum. It was used similar to the 30-06 in the Wimbledon competition matches. It's been used to hunt all over the world. It's a very famous hunting cartridge in Africa. And all in all, it's just a good cartridge and a classic cartridge. Even though it feeds really well and it has a functional belt, which are features of its design intended by its creator, Weatherby just thought he could take that 300 H&H and improve upon it, and he came out with a 300 Weatherby Magnum. Both of these cartridges are Magnum length cartridges, and the next two we'll talk about, the 308 Norma Mag and the 300 Win Mag, are of course standard action, so they're the 300 H&H shortened a little bit. But the Weatherby is full length, and what Roy Weatherby did was he did something similar to P.O. Ackley. He wanted more case capacity, and he didn't think that extreme body taper and 8-degree shoulder angle was the way to go. So of course he pushed it out, fattened that cartridge a little bit, took out the taper, giving it more case capacity, and gave it that Venturi double radius shoulder, and that gives it a significant increase in case capacity. Therefore, the Weatherby will definitely have more velocity. It's going to have more velocity and energy because that bullet's going to be coming out faster because it has a lot more case capacity. The H&H has 62,000 on the max pressure. The Weatherby has 65,000. The neck length on the Weatherby is actually pretty long. It's well beyond the diameter size that we're looking for. The H&H, though, is even longer than that. It's got an extremely long neck. All in all, this is a pretty easy choice for me. I just think the Weatherby is an improvement. I agree with Roy Weatherby. It's an improvement upon the 300 H&H. 300 H&H is classic. Like I said, the parent case of several of these cartridges that we're going to talk about today has a functional belt. It's really cool, but the Weatherby is just an improvement, and I just don't see why you would ever pick the H&H over the Weatherby. So I'm going to give it to the 300 Weatherby. All right, on to two more children of the 300 Weatherby, the 308 Norma mag and the 300 Win mag. So this matchup is extremely close because they're both cartridges taken from the 300 H&H, shortened down to standard length actions. You know, just a similar design overall. These cartridges came out around the same time, the late 50s, early 60s. Obviously, one was a runaway success and one was not, although in other parts of the world, the 308 Norma is still popular. But they're very, very similar in design. They're just about the same thing. Really, the only difference comes in case capacity and neck length. The 308 Norma mag has a longer neck. It's more around the size of the diameter of the bullet. And the 300 Win mag has a much shorter neck. Actually, it's around 264 diameter instead of 308 diameter. But what that gives the 300 Win mag is a longer just main body of the case, giving it more case capacity. So the main well of the cartridge where the powder is held is just bigger. It's just longer on the 300 Win mag, and then it has a smaller neck. And the 308 Norma mag is a little bit shorter well of the cartridge, holding a little bit less powder, but with a longer neck. Now, if you look at a reloading manual at the case capacity, it's going to look significantly bigger on the 300 Win mag because they're just literally filling it with water, and there's quite a bit of difference in the two. However, when you're loading a bullet in, let's say a 200 grain bullet, on the Win mag, you're going to have to push that bullet down a lot further into the case because the neck is shorter. And therefore, the case capacity difference is not quite as big as it first seems. With the longer neck of the Norma mag, it's going to hold a bigger chunk of that bullet, and it's not going to need to go into the case and take away capacity. Having said that, there's still an advantage with the Win mag. It's still going to have more case capacity and probably have 100 feet per second more velocity. Possibly more. So it really just comes down to what you're looking for. Generally speaking, I would say there's a potential for a better inherent accuracy out of the 308 Norma mag with that longer neck and the bore alignment with that bullet potentially being slightly more accurate. And that might not be true, and it definitely will not be true in all cases. So do you want the most velocity that you can possibly get out of that cartridge, or do you want a longer neck holding that longer bullet and potentially slightly better accuracy? It really just comes down to personal preference. My personal preference would lean toward the 308 Norma mag. That's just more of the design style that I prefer. However, I cannot even begin to try and act like the 300 Win mag is a bad design cartridge, because it's not. Winchester knew exactly what they were doing when they designed it, and they understood the neck length and they knew what they were doing, and it's exactly the cartridge that they set out to design. They wanted it to have as much case capacity as possible. So I would say both cartridges are designed exactly the way they were intended to be designed, and they meet the goals that they set out to meet. So who wins? It's really tough because I just don't see a real winner. If you're looking for the most velocity, definitely go with the Win mag. If you like the design characteristics that I talked about, you might want to go with a 308 Norma mag. Now, my personal opinion is I kind of like the design of the 308 Norma mag better, but I can't say it's objectively better, because if you're hunting, and that's really what this is about, is hunting, that extra feet per second is going to come in extremely handy. So I'm going to say it's a tie. It's a draw. I just can't come up with a winner. They're just too similar, and they both meet the goals that they set out to do. And so to me, they're extremely even. And so to break the tie, I'm going to go with availability, even though I don't want to talk about that in a best design series. That's what I have to use to break the tie. And of course, there's no contest. It's the 300 Win mag. Extremely popular all over the world. It has been used for long-range target shooting, usually in a custom rifle with a custom chamber. It's been used as a sniper rifle, but hunting is where it's most successful. I would say in Africa, it's probably took over the 300 H&H or the 30-06 in popularity. I think more people in Africa are using a 300 Win Mag than anything else. Up in Alaska, it's extremely popular. Pretty much anywhere there's hunting of medium to big size game, excluding dangerous game, the 300 Win Mag is extremely popular. And it definitely has been more successful, popular, and is more available than the .38 Norma mag. So in this regard, I'm just going to have to break the tie by giving it to the 300 Win Mag based on availability. All right, next matchup. The 300 Rum, the Remington Ultra Magnum, versus the 378 Weatherby Magnum. Both cartridges really take their parent case design from old African cartridges developed in Britain, early, like 1908, 19 teens. The 300 Rum is based on the 404 Jeffries, just kind of modernized. And the 378 Weatherby is based on the 416 Rigby. In fact, all the 378 Weatherby cartridges are based on the Rigby. So basically it's just a Rigby case with a few different touches to it. And this really just comes down to how big do you want to go? There's a part of me that says if you're going to go big, go the biggest, which would be the 378. It is just a bigger case. The Rigby case is just bigger than the Jeffries case. That's all there is to it. It's just wider. They're about the same length. They're both going to fit in a Magnum length action, but the Rigby is just a wider case, so it's going to have more case capacity. If you want to see something interesting, get the most recent Nosler manual, I believe Nosler 9, and compare the 300 Rum to the 378 Weatherby Magnum, and just go back and forth, and you're going to see a lot of inconsistencies. I think they screwed up. I think there's some faulty information there. You will look at a 180 grain bullet compared to a 180 grain bullet, and specifically there's way more case capacity in the 378 versus the Rum, yet it's giving like 200 more feet per second to the Rum. And you're thinking, oh man, this must be more efficient. But then you turn the next page to the 190 grain and it's flipped back in favor of the 378. It's got 200 feet per second more. And then you go to the 200 grain and it's flipped back. And the the Rum, once again, with way less case capacity, way less powder being used, is coming up with way more velocity. And then you go to the next one, like the 210, the 220, and it flips back to the Weatherby. There's something isn't right there. Something isn't correct. It's not consistent. It doesn't add up. But generally speaking, the Weatherby cartridge has more case capacity and will shoot the bullet faster. They're both, going to have similar max pressures around 63 to 65,000. Both have neck lengths about the same. It's just, how big do you want to go? In my opinion, I'm all about efficient cartridges. So to me, the Rum is too much or way too much, and therefore the 378 is way too much. The 300 Rum is going to have a very short barrel life. It's going to have a lot of kick. It's going to be very expensive to shoot, and then your 378 is just going to be even more overbore, even more overpowered. And so I'm going to give it to the 300 Rum. But if you're looking, if you don't care about extreme short barrel life and you don't care about recoil and you had to pick between the two, maybe you would lean toward the 378. If I had to pick one of the two, which neither one is really my cup of tea, I would definitely go with the 300 Rum. All right, last matchup today. I saved the hardest for last. The 30 Nosler versus the 300 PRC. Two very modern cartridges, very efficient cartridges, very well designed cartridges. If you look at these cartridges side by side, I'll show a picture here. They're pretty similar overall. Like I've talked about before, the Nosler cartridges are just a standard length Jeffries case. The WSMs are just a short action Jeffries case, and the Rums are just a full length action Jeffries case with some differences here and there. It's not a complete, it's not straight across the board, but that's kind of what they are. You just WSM, Nosler, Rum. It's just your different length cartridges based on that 404 Jeffries. The 300 PRC is just based on the 375 Ruger. And like we talked about back when I was talking about the RCM versus the WSM versus the SOM, the 375 Ruger case is just a little bit less wide, and therefore the Nosler case is just a little wider and it can hold a little bit more case capacity. Overall, their length is about the same, with the PRC being slightly longer. The Nosler has a 35-degree shoulder angle, like the WSMs, and the PRC has a 30-degree shoulder angle. So with that 35-degree shoulder angle and the case being slightly wider, your 30 Nosler is going to have a little bit more case capacity. Not much, but a little bit more. And it's going to have a little bit more velocity and energy. But it's not much. It's very, very close. Really the only difference that jumps out is the overall cartridge length, of course, is Magnum length on the 300 PRC, because they're expecting you to shoot very heavy per caliber bullets, 200 to like 250, really heavy bullets. And it comes, generally speaking, in a 1-in-8 twist. Your 30 Nosler, at least in the reloading manual of Nosler, shows a 1-in-10 twist. Maybe they've changed that, but at least when they made their latest reloading manual, it shows a 1-in-10 twist. So just like your 30-06 or any other of these 30 caliber cartridges we've talked about today, except for the PRC, they're all 1-in-10. And they're all going to top out around 220 grains. That's the absolute max bullet weight that you're going to get out of a 1-in-10 twist. So the Nosler is designed to be a 30 caliber Magnum, just like all the other ones we've talked about today, but probably a more efficient version of them. And same twist rate, standard length, just probably a little bit more efficient version, but have quite a bit of case capacity and go very fast. The 300 PRC has similar designs, efficient, modern, but yet it's thinking about heavy bullets. So like a 225 grain bullet, 240 grain bullet, something like that, it's kind of what it's designed for, you know? So it's gonna have a long bullet, but because it's a Magnum length action, that bullet can seat out there really far and not go down into the well of the case capacity. So once again, if you compare the two and let's say you're shooting a 150 grain bullet, I would definitely go with the Nosler, okay? There's just no point in having that PRC and shooting a 150 grain bullet. If you're going with a 180 grain bullet, I think I would still pick the Nosler. But if you go beyond that, from 180 to 220, or maybe 200 to 220, the PRC is going to have a bit of an advantage because the bullet's not going to be seated down as far into the case. And then the Nosler can't go beyond that when the PRC can. It can go much heavier with that 1-in-8 twist. So this is a very tough one. I kind of feel like I shouldn't have put these two against each other so early, because I feel like they both potentially could have won the whole thing. Very good cartridges. It's a tough call, but I'm going to give it to the PRC just because it's more versatile. Even though it's not really designed for lighter bullets, there would be no downside to it. It's going to shoot those just fine. However, it would do much better with the heavier bullets, and the Nosler can't do those heaviest bullets. So the 300 PRC edges it out because of its versatility. So both of these cartridges are genius designs, brilliant designs, very great 30 caliber cartridges. The 300 PRC just slightly edges it out. All right, there's the Elite 8. So, winners today. Winners from parts 1 and 2. So the Elite 8 matchups will be the 30-06 Springfield, 300 WSM, 308 versus 300 Savage, 300 Weatherby Magnum versus the 300 Win Mag, and the 300 PRC versus the 300 Rum. Stay tuned. All right, so you see the Elite 8. It's been pretty tough so far. Some good cartridges have been knocked out. But there's 8 phenomenal 30 caliber cartridges left to go. And in part 4, we'll start the Elite 8 and see how far we can get. I'm excited to continue to talk about this and continue to think about it and to produce videos on it. If you're enjoying this series and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please like the video. Please comment. Tell me if I made the right call, if I made the wrong call, what you would have picked in these matchups. Also, check the description below. I've got lots of links in there to, if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter or Patreon, my other YouTube channels. And so hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you're enjoying the series. Hope you have a great day. And until next time, take care.